The night before my wedding, my phone buzzed, and I almost didn't pick it up. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the final seating chart like it was the last boss fight of my life, when I saw my mom's name flash across the screen. I smiled. Maybe she was calling to say she was proud of me, that she couldn't wait to see me walk down the aisle tomorrow. You know, the kind of thing moms say in heartfelt movie scenes. Instead, the first words out of her mouth were, "We need you to cancel." I thought I misheard. "Cancel what?" "Your wedding," she said flatly, like she was telling me the weather report. "Family comes first, and your brother's engagement party is tomorrow. We need the venue and the date." For a second, I actually laughed. Like an actual out-loud laugh, thinking it was a weird joke. But then I heard my dad in the background, saying something about logistics, and it's only fair since he got engaged last month. My stomach dropped. I should probably introduce myself here. My name's Bennett. I'm 29, and I've been with my fiancée, Claire, for 7 years. We've been planning this wedding for over a year. Deposits, vendors, seating arrangements. All of it carefully put together while I worked double shifts to afford a venue that wouldn't make us feel like we were crammed into a church basement. So hearing my parents casually tell me to cancel, like it was no big deal, was surreal. I tried to keep my voice even. "You want me to cancel my wedding? The wedding that's tomorrow. So you can throw an engagement party? Don't make this harder than it has to be," my mom said, her voice sharp now. "Your brother is finally settling down. This is a big deal. He's our firstborn, Bennett. He deserves to celebrate properly." I felt something inside me twist. That old, familiar knot. The one I'd been carrying since we were kids. The one that always reminded me I'd never be the golden child. My brother, Ethan, could do no wrong. Growing up, he got the new bike, the new car, the bigger bedroom. I got his hand-me-downs and lectures about being more responsible. I glanced over at Claire, who was watching me nervously from across the room. I could see the questions in her eyes. Was I really going to argue with them the night before our wedding? Was I going to let them ruin this for us? But instead of arguing, I took a slow breath and said the calmest thing I could manage. "Fine, I'll cancel." There was silence on the line, like they didn't expect me to agree so easily. Then my dad said, "Good. That's the mature choice. You'll thank us later." After we hung up, Claire just stared at me. "You're seriously canceling?" "Yep," I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. My hands weren't even shaking. "But I'm not giving them what they want." "Not exactly." I didn't sleep that night. I made calls. I sent emails. By sunrise, I had rearranged everything. Not canceled, rearranged. And then I turned my phone off, packed a bag, and disappeared with Claire for a week. No explanations. No updates. Just gone. By the time Saturday rolled around, my family was blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, voicemails ranging from furious to pleading. I didn't answer any of them. But I did make sure I'd be watching when they showed up to the venue, all dressed up for the big engagement party. And that's where things get interesting. Because when they arrived, they were met by security. Real, hired security. And the guest list? The only names that could get past that front gate were the ones I had personally approved. I was sitting in a chair by the window when my phone lit up with the first panicked call. And well, that's when the fun really started. The first call was from my mom. I didn't answer. Then came a text. "Why are there guards at the gate?" We told them we're family. I sat back in the chair and smiled. Claire, sitting across from me in her dress, the same dress she was supposed to wear for the wedding, raised an eyebrow. "You're enjoying this way too much," she said softly, though I could see the corner of her mouth twitching like she wanted to laugh too. "After what they pulled?" I said, "This is me being polite." I glanced out the window. The venue was perched on a hill, overlooking a long driveway. From where we sat, I could see them, a cluster of cars lined up at the front gate. My mom's SUV was right in the middle, hazard lights blinking. Another text buzzed. Then another. My dad this time. "Bennett, what is going on? The guard says the entire venue is reserved for a private event." I let the phone buzz on the table. It was almost satisfying, hearing it rattle against the wood. Claire stood and walked to the window, peeking through the sheer curtains. "They look mad," she said. "Good," I muttered. This wasn't petty anymore. This was justice. Because here's what I hadn't told anyone. Not my parents, not Ethan, not even Claire until last night. I had quietly upgraded everything after that phone call. Not just the venue, but the catering, the flowers, the music. I doubled the guest list and turned it into a private, No expense spared celebration. And the kicker? I kept the date. So, as far as the venue was concerned, this wasn't a canceled wedding. It was still my event, just no longer a wedding in the traditional sense. The first car pulled away from the gate after 10 minutes, tires kicking gravel. My brother's, I realized with grim satisfaction. I imagined him fuming behind the wheel, his fiancée sitting next to him, probably crying because how could I do this to them? 10 minutes later, another text came through. This one was from Ethan. You're being ridiculous. Just let us in. We'll share the space. Share the space. I could almost hear his smug tone through the screen, like he expected me to cave the moment he asked nicely. That was always his move, blow up first, then pretend he was being reasonable, so I'd be the bad guy for saying no. I set the phone down without replying. Claire came over and squeezed my shoulder. You're sure about this? Positive. I turned the screen face down. They wanted me to disappear so they could have their big party. So I did exactly what they asked. I disappeared from their version of my life, and now they don't get to be part of mine. A knock at the suite door made us both jump. For a second, I thought it might be them, that somehow they'd talked their way in. But when I opened the door, it was the venue coordinator. They're not leaving, she said carefully, like she wasn't sure how much of this was drama and how much was intentional. Do you want us to have security escort them completely off the property? I hesitated. This was the moment where everything tipped. I could still end it here. Let them in, pretend this was some big misunderstanding, and just deal with the fallout later. But then I remembered that phone call. My mom's voice, sharp and dismissive. My dad's casual, you'll thank us later. The way they'd made me feel like my own wedding was an inconvenience. No, I said finally. Just keep them outside. No exceptions. The coordinator nodded and left. When I closed the door, Claire gave me a look. You know this is going to blow up the entire family, right? Let it, I said quietly. Maybe it's time. Down the hill, I could see my mom pacing near her car, waving her hands in the air as she argued with one of the guards. My dad stood off to the side, arms crossed, his face red even from this distance. And then my phone buzzed again, this time with a video call request. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. When I finally answered, the camera showed my mom's face, flushed and furious. Bennett, this has gone far enough. Open those gates right now. Your brother's fiancé's family is here, and they're humiliated. Do you understand what you're doing to us? I just smiled. And then, before I could say a word, someone else stepped into the frame. Ethan, his tie crooked, looking like he'd been yelling for 20 minutes straight. You think this is funny? He snapped. You ruined everything. You ruined her night. I tilted the phone so they could see over my shoulder. The room behind me, filled with flowers, music faintly playing in the background, guests starting to arrive in elegant suits and dresses. This, I said slowly, is not about you. And before either of them could respond, I ended the call. Claire was staring at me, her hand over her mouth. Was that too much? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, she said after a moment, her voice almost a whisper. That was perfect. Outside, I saw my mom throw her hands up and turn away from the gate. But they didn't leave. They stayed. And that's when I knew this night was far from over. Oh, they weren't going anywhere. The cars stayed lined up like some bizarre tailgate party, hazard lights blinking in the twilight. From the window, I could see silhouettes pacing, hands waving in exaggerated frustration. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed again. Calls from mom, dad, Ethan, even my aunt and uncle, who I knew had been invited to the engagement party. I ignored every single one. Inside the venue, the atmosphere was completely different. Warm lighting, soft music, the low hum of conversation as guests arrived and were shown to their tables. Friends of mine from college were laughing near the bar, co-workers shaking hands with Claire's cousins. It should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like a kind of armor. These were our people, people who were happy for us, not using us as placeholders until Ethan needed center stage again. Claire slipped her arm through mine as we stood near the entrance to greet guests. They're still outside, she whispered, as if we were talking about a pack of wolves we didn't want to spook. Good, I said. The thing about my family is, they were never loud when it mattered. They liked to pretend their words were reasonable, logical. They'd smile and say something devastating like it was just common sense, like telling me my wedding didn't matter compared to Ethan's big moment. But now they were loud. loud enough that I could hear faint shouting even through the thick glass windows. And I wasn't done yet. Half an hour later, the venue coordinator came back. "They're trying to send some of your guests out to negotiate," she said delicately. Sure enough, when I peeked outside, I saw two of my cousins approaching the gate, clearly sent as emissaries. They talked with security for a few minutes before pulling out their phones, probably calling me right there. I still didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Claire. "Want to make this interesting?" She gave me a suspicious look. "What do you mean?" I grinned. "Let's start dinner." It was petty, I'll admit it. But there was something deeply satisfying about the idea that my parents and brother would be standing out there, hungry, sweating in their fancy clothes, while the smell of perfectly cooked filet mignon drifted toward them from the open catering doors. So we did it. We started dinner right on time. Guests took their seats, plates were served, champagne poured. The string quartet played something elegant as servers moved gracefully between tables. And just like I imagined, the smell carried. I caught sight of my mom through the window, arms crossed, glaring at the building like she could burn a hole through the wall. That should have been enough for me. But then my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Ethan. "You're humiliating us. I swear, if you don't open the gate, we're coming in anyway." I actually laughed. Claire leaned over my shoulder to read it and let out a low whistle. "He's losing it," she said. "Oh, he's past losing it," I muttered. "He's in full tantrum mode now." Sure enough, not 5 minutes later, we saw Ethan striding toward the gate, hands out, shouting something I couldn't hear. He grabbed the bars and shook them like this was some kind of dramatic movie prison scene. Then he pointed toward the building, probably at me. Security didn't flinch. When that didn't work, he stormed back to his car. I thought he might finally leave, but no. A few minutes later, his car doors opened and out came his fiancée's parents, clearly mortified, trying to talk him down. His fiancée looked like she was crying. Claire touched my arm. "Do you feel even a little bad?" I paused, watching them argue by the gate. Watching my mom step in and point at the venue like she owned it. Watching my dad bark something at the guard, face red. "No," I said finally. "Not even a little. Because here's the thing. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about every single time they'd made me feel like I didn't matter, every time they made my milestones small so Ethan's could feel big. This was about being told, over and over, to be the understanding one, the mature one, the one who sacrifices. I was done sacrificing. Dinner ended. Toast began. One of my best friends stood and gave a speech that had everyone laughing so hard they nearly cried. Claire's maid of honor followed with something so sweet half the room actually did cry. And all the while, I could still see them outside, still waiting. Finally, near the end of the speeches, my phone buzzed one more time, this time with a message from my dad. "Last chance, Bennett. Open the gate, or we will call the police. You're embarrassing the entire family." I read the message twice, then handed my phone to Claire. She read it, looked at me, and said simply, "Do it." So I did. I handed the phone to the coordinator, who made a quick call to security, not to let them in, but to remind them that this was a legally binding private event, and anyone trespassing could be arrested. 10 minutes later, I saw my dad's car pull out of the line and leave. Then my aunt's. Then my uncle's. Soon, only Ethan's car remained. And then even he left. For the first time all evening, I let myself breathe. But I knew it wasn't over. Because if there's one thing about my family I can count on, it's that they never take being outplayed quietly. Claire must have read my mind, because she leaned in and whispered, "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." "Oh," I said, a grin spreading across my face. "Tomorrow's going to be fun." I didn't know then just how right I was. Because the next morning, I woke up to nearly 100 messages, texts, voicemails, missed calls, all variations of the same theme: rage, guilt trips, demands for an explanation. But the one that really caught my attention? A message from Ethan that just said, "You think you've won, but you haven't heard the last of this." I stared at it for a long moment, then set my phone down and reached for my coffee. "Oh, little brother," I said under my breath. "You have no idea what's coming next." The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. It felt like it hadn't stopped all night. Claire was still asleep beside me, peaceful, blissfully unaware of the digital storm brewing just outside our locked screen. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through the notifications, and couldn't help but smirk. Group chat messages, missed calls from mom, voicemails from dad. Even a few long-winded texts from Ethan's fiancée, accusing me of ruining the happiest night of their lives. I tossed the phone on the nightstand and made coffee. Claire wandered out of the bedroom a few minutes later, hair a mess, wearing one of my shirts. What's going on? Apparently, I said, sipping from my mug. We destroyed Ethan's engagement party, embarrassed the entire family, and caused some kind of social apocalypse. Sounds productive, she said, grinning sleepily. But my grin faded as I opened one more message, a voice memo from my dad. His tone was clipped, controlled. Bennett, you've made your point. Now it's time to apologize to your brother and to the rest of the family. This feud ends today, or you won't be welcome in this family anymore. There it was. The threat. The ultimatum. The one they always dangled over me since we were kids. Fall in line, or you're out. But this time, I didn't feel that old fear rise up in my chest. Instead, I felt calm. Cold, even. I looked at Claire. I think it's time we ended this. But on our terms. That afternoon, I sent one message to the family group chat. Dinner. My place. Tonight. Everyone. Within minutes, the responses came in. Mostly confusion, a little suspicion. But they all agreed to come. Of course they did. Curiosity was one thing my family could never resist. Claire and I spent the day preparing. Not just dinner, though we cooked enough to feed an army, but the living room too. I set up the big TV, connected my laptop, and queued up a folder of photos and videos I'd been saving for months. When evening came, they all arrived, one car after another, just like the night before. My parents came in first, tight smiles on their faces. Ethan and his fiancée followed, her eyes puffy from crying, his jaw tight. My aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole clan filed in. I waited until everyone had taken their seats, plates of food in front of them, the tension so thick you could practically slice it. All right, my dad said, crossing his arms. You've had your fun. Now explain yourself. I nodded, walked over to the TV, and clicked play. The first thing on the screen was a slideshow of all the canceled checks, receipts, and contracts for the wedding. Every single thing Claire and I had paid for ourselves. Every florist deposit, every catering invoice, every hour of overtime I'd worked just to afford it. This, I said, turning back to them, is what you asked me to throw away. You asked me to cancel a year of work and thousands of dollars just so Ethan could have a party. My mom opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. Next came the photos. Pictures of Ethan's previous parties, birthdays, celebrations. Photos where I was in the background cleaning up plates, or standing off to the side holding someone's coat, or not even invited. I had dug through years of Facebook albums to find them. You've made it clear for years that I'm not the priority, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. I've been expected to shrink myself so Ethan could have the spotlight. I've been told to be the bigger person, to compromise, to let things go. Well, I'm done letting it go. Ethan scoffed. So what? You humiliated us last night to prove a point. Yes, I said flatly. I wanted you to feel, for one night, what I felt for years, locked out, left out, watching someone else be celebrated while you're treated like an afterthought. My dad slammed his hand on the table. This is childish. No, I said, my voice calm but firm. This is the first time I've ever stood up to you. I turned to Claire, who nodded. Then I clicked to the final slide. It was a photo of us at the venue last night, surrounded by our friends, smiling. Beneath it was one line of text. This was our wedding. The room went silent. Ethan blinked. Wait, you got married? I nodded. Yes. At the same venue. At the same time. You told me to cancel, so I canceled the version you wanted me to have, the one where you got to take center stage. Instead, I had the wedding Claire and I wanted, surrounded by people who actually care about us. My mom gasped. You didn't even invite us? No, I said, my voice like steel. Because you didn't earn an invitation. The words hung in the air. For once, no one spoke. No one tried to argue. No one tried to guilt trip me. Finally, my dad pushed back from the table. If that's how you feel, maybe you really aren't part of this family anymore. I took a deep breath and stood up. Then that's your choice. But understand this. I'm done chasing your approval. I'm done sacrificing my happiness to keep the peace. Claire and I are building our own family now, with or without you. I walked to the door and opened it. If anyone can respect that, you're welcome to stay. If not, you know where the exit is. For a moment, no one moved. Then my aunt stood up. I'm staying, she said quietly. I think it's about time someone said this out loud. One by one, a few cousins and uncles nodded and stayed seated. My mom looked torn, her eyes darting between me and my dad. Ethan grabbed his fiance's hand and stormed out, muttering under his breath. My dad followed without a word. My mom hesitated at the door, then turned back to me. "You broke this family tonight," she said softly. "No," I said. I finally stopped letting it break me. And then she left too. That night, for the first time in years, the house felt light. Free. The people who stayed helped us finish dinner, laughing and telling stories until late into the night. Claire sat beside me, her hand warm in mine, her smile tired but real. When the last guest left, she turned to me. "Do you think they'll come around?" "Maybe," I said, pulling her close. "But even if they don't, we'll be fine." And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. Because I hadn't just won an argument. I had taken my life back. And that, to me, felt like the perfect ending.